Well, Thanksgiving is around the corner and we still don't know who's good in the NFL, so maybe by Christmas. Grossi Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. No, seriously, we know like a few teams that are good, but what is going on? Grossi. And today we are going to be trying and attempting to rank the top 10 teams heading into week 13 of the NFL season. Last week in week 12, we had a few teams that were on a bye week. This week, no teams on a bye as we have 3 games on Thanksgiving. We have the Black Friday game. Then week 14 is the final bye week in the NFL, and it will be a full sprint to the finish. Before we jump into honorable mentions, I want to say a big thank you and shout out to everybody who recently has subscribed. Over the past 2 weeks, we've gotten over 10,000 subscribers. We just hit 935K today, so thank you so much. We are now 65,000 subscribers away from 1 million. There's no sponsors here, and it is free to subscribe, so thank you to all who have done so, and thank you for all of the support. And so getting into the honorable mentions, I'm not going to lie, this was probably one of the most challenging power rankings I've had to do this season. You had the Eagles who blew a 21-point lead to the Cowboys who just did not show up in the second half. You had the Colts blow a 20-9 lead in the fourth quarter against the Chiefs. And while the Rams still dominated and will still be the number 1 team, spoilers, there's starting to be some movement in the bottom 5 as this playoff picture gets a little bit clearer. But who knows, man? The Lions had a really tough time with the Giants, the Patriots. While they did avoid serious injury, they're going to be losing Will Campbell for a little bit. And so, yeah, I have no idea what's going on, but let's just get into honorable mentions. Starting off with the Houston Texans. The Texans, well, I think we put a nail in the coffin of their season a few weeks ago, but we acknowledged how good that defense was. Well, guess what? They ain't dead yet. That defense dominated the Buffalo Bills on Thursday, sacking Josh Allen for a career high 8 times in that game, and they just did not allow the Bills to get anything going. While James Cook was able to get a touchdown earlier in that game, they really didn't allow that offense to push down the field, and the Bills did have an opportunity to win that game at the end, but again, that defense came up super clutch. And looking at the offensive side of things, you still have Davis Mills who's running the ship, and ultimately CJ Stroud will be the starter again when he is healthy. And I do still have a ton of concerns about that offense, but their defense is one of, if not the best in football right now. And so because of that, you got to give them some respect, knocking down the high-powered offense of the Buffalo Bills, who are no longer in the top 10. And who knows, maybe if the Strouds are able to put together some games, they can find themselves back in the playoff picture. Then another honorable mention, I gotta shout out the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs, another team that we were like, all right, maybe they're not gonna make the postseason. They ain't done yet. And listen, this was an ugly game for the Kansas City Chiefs. However, they did 2 things really well, especially in that second half. One, they gave the ball a lot to Kareem Hunt, and he actually got over 100 yards, so they actually had an established run game, which we have not really seen this season at all. And the second thing is that defense really locked down in the second half, and they really didn't allow Jonathan Taylor to do much. And heading into the fourth quarter, like I said, they were down 20-9, able to get a big win at home and keeping those playoff hopes alive. Now, they do have a very challenging matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, who got a big win this past Sunday on Thanksgiving, and that game is going to be real interesting as it seems that both teams are fighting for their potential playoff lives. And so for the Chiefs, I'm not willing to put them in the top 10 just yet because they still have a ways to go, but they deserve credit for knocking off the Indianapolis Colts, which is not an easy thing to do this season, and so because of that, they get a shout out. Then you got the Dallas Cowboys. How about them Cowboys? We talked about the Cowboys in predictions last week saying, all right, well, they looked really good against the Raiders. Quinnen Williams was doing well. It's really nice to have Overshown back. But can they do that against a good team? And if you looked at the first half of that game against the Eagles, the answer was no, they cannot, as they were losing 21-0. But then that defense didn't allow the Eagles to do anything on offense, though you could make an argument that Patullo didn't allow the Eagles to do anything on offense. But they were eventually able to rally back and win that game in overtime off a Brandon Aubrey field goal. And here's the thing about the Cowboys. When they made the Micah Parsons trade, everybody made fun of them, and rightfully so, because Micah Parsons is doing pretty darn well for the Packers. But when they made that Quinnen Williams trade, it was like, okay, they're probably going to be pretty set up for next season. However, they are not going gently into that good night. And while they are going to have some tough games ahead, especially against the Chiefs on Thanksgiving, their playoff hopes are not completely dead right now. They have now split the series with the Philadelphia Eagles. And while I do still have some concerns about that secondary, their offense, especially George Pickens, has looked really damn good. And while CeeDee Lamb is still having some problems catching the football, he is still a very good wide receiver. And that offense is dangerous for any team they're going up against. And so for the Cowboys, their playoff hopes stay alive, and because of that, they get an honorable mention. And then finally, the last honorable mention, you got the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, here's why they get an honorable mention. One, they are now leading in the AFC North, so congratulations, that's fantastic. Their defense has looked really darn good the past few weeks, and so that's really good. However, they definitely had some struggles in the first half against the New York Jets, and on top of that, that offense still hasn't looked great. And while you do need to give some credit to the Jets, especially after trading away Sauce Gardner and Quinnen Williams, because that defense is still fighting, the Jets are not a very good football team and had opportunities to win that game. And when you look at Lamar Jackson, he just hasn't looked like himself the past few weeks. I know he's still battling through some injuries, and so hopefully as the season progresses, he'll be able to get a little bit healthier and maybe that flash will come back. They got a matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals this Thursday on Thanksgiving, and so we'll see if they're going to be able to light it up against that Bengals defense, even though that Bengals defense did pretty well on Sunday. But yeah, Ravens, I'm not ready to put them in the top 10 just yet, but they're leading their division, and for Steelers fans, I don't think anybody's surprised. And so starting off with number 10, you got the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars, this team is so confusing, but they deserve a spot on the list.
It makes no damn sense. Compels me, though.
Trevor Lawrence can have the most amazing throws. 3 touchdowns. Oh, man, he's a franchise QB. 3 interceptions. What is he doing? And while Travis Etienne had himself a really nice game, and I'm really happy for Travis Etienne because I think he is a really good player, the Jaguars offense just befuddles me. Whether it's been wide receiver woes with injuries like Travis Hunter or not catching the ball like Brian Thomas Jr., it is just maddening. And again, I just don't know who the Jaguars are. They stomped the Chargers last week, so you're like, okay, maybe they're pretty good even though they're going up against a bad offensive line. But then they had a close game with the Cardinals, which is what I predicted on predictions, but it was a real damn close game. And the infuriating thing is that so many of these things are self-induced errors. And so while Trevor Lawrence is definitely a wild card, the Jaguars are trying to be a wild card team this season. And who knows, if this team's able to string together some wins, I know they have 2 matchups against the Indianapolis Colts, they might be able to make their way into the postseason. But for right now, they come in at number 10. They've been in the top 10 before. Who knows how long they're going to stay up there. Number 9. You got the San Francisco 49ers. Are you happy, 49ers fans? You gotta be, because Brock Purdy kept throwing interceptions nonstop on Monday night, but that defense was reliable as ever.
I can fix that. I can fix that.
Time kept on fix that.
And here's the thing, the 49ers do not have a good secondary. Coming into this game, they were the second worst secondary in football. However, they were still able to get 2 interceptions off of Bryce Young, 1 in the end zone, and they did a really nice job just stopping whatever the Panthers were attempting to do on offense. And the Panthers offense was not very good. But speaking of not good offenses, Brock Purdy threw 3 interceptions in the first half. And once again, CMC was a monster, and George Kittle had himself a really nice game as their leading receiver. You have to be a little bit frustrated as Brock Purdy had a really nice game in his return matchup last week in that big win, but then this week he did not look so good and people were calling for Mac Jones at halftime. And so yeah, the 49ers, they are a very injured football team, but they are still stringing together a bunch of wins. They've won 8 games on the season and they deserve a whole lot of credit for that, especially in a very competitive division. We'll see how they look by the end of the year, and who knows, maybe we'll have 3 teams from the NFC West making it into the postseason, but for right now, their defense saves them, and so the 49ers come in at number 9. Number 8, they can't keep getting away with this. You got the Chicago Bears. The Bears All right, well, let me say something positive about the Bears first. First of all, I know Bears fans might be feeling a little perturbed that they didn't move up in this list after beating the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I totally get that. To me, beating Mason Rudolph at home is not the greatest accolade. However, I'm going to give the Bears a ton of credit. Their linebackers, who are they? I don't know. They're working with 4th, 5th, 6th string linebackers out there. Their secondary is still decimated, and yet they were still able to get a big-time win over the Pittsburgh Steelers. Was it against Aaron Rodgers so they can finally close the book and say, he doesn't own us anymore? No, but hey, they're still finding a way to stay alive and pick up their 4th straight win.
I'm one with the force, the force is with me. I'm one with the force, the force is with me. I'm one with the force, and the force is with me.
Caleb Williams had himself another nice game on Sunday, and ultimately, as we've been talking about the Chicago Bears, they are going to get tested down the line, starting off on Friday when they face off against the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Bears, regardless of how you feel about them and their schedule and the teams that they have beaten, the fact that they've won this many games at this point in the season, and they are still number 1 in the NFC North, they deserve some damn credit. Caleb Williams has definitely progressed and developed this year. Ben Johnson seems to be the guy in Chicago. And the fact that they are winning games with a no-name defense right now while everybody is out, yeah, they deserve a pat on the back. Am I going to give you that pat on the back? I'm going to avoid it like the plague, but there you go. I gave you at least one. And so now with the Eagles on Friday, the Bears have an opportunity to really jump up in the power rankings if they're able to get that big time win. Because damn, if they're able to get that win over the Eagles, they'll be able to not only be number 1 in the division, but they'll be able to do something that both the Lions and Packers couldn't do, and that is beat Philadelphia. And so the real test begins now, Chicago. Will you rise to the occasion? I hope not, but you're still in the top 10 at number 8. Number 7. You got the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts only dropping a couple of spots here, and that's just because, damn, that was a blown opportunity. They had that game well in hand. They were winning 20-9 going into the 4th quarter, and they fought hard, but that was a tough defeat for Indiana Jones.
You lost today, kid. But it doesn't mean you have to like it.
And for the Colts, you see a lot of their fans are panicking a little bit right now. And here's the thing. They were able to go into Arrowhead and they lost narrowly to the Kansas City Chiefs, a team that they were beating for 3 straight quarters. But at the very end, coaching definitely got in the way as they were playing very conservatively and playing not to lose. And ultimately, they did lose. You do got to give a lot of credit to the Chiefs defense, as I said, that they did really well in that 4th quarter and in the second half. But ultimately for the Colts, this one definitely got away from them. And unfortunately for Indianapolis, their season is not going to get easier. They still got to play against that Texans defense twice, and they got to play against the Jaguars twice. And again, there are only 6 games left. So that is going to be a very challenging way to end the year. So we'll see real quick if the Indianapolis Colts can rebound from this loss. But ultimately, it's a tough one to swallow. They only lose themselves 1 spots because I still think they are a good team in the AFC, but they better right that ship quickly or else they're going to be in free fall. Number 6, you got the Green Bay mother-loving Packers. Woo! The Packers took care of business on Sunday, and that Packers defense made easy work of the purple incarnation of Satan.
You can't wear a t-shirt with that word on it.
Wait, which word, Hank? Satan or sucks?
Why not, Dad? Satan does suck.
I know, but
He's right, Hank. What does your shirt say? Satan rules?
Oh, I'm so happy we got Micah Parsons. Thank you again, Cowboys. But yeah, let's talk about the Packers. The Packers are moving up in the power rankings because unlike the Lions, who lost to the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy, the Packers were able to dominate the Minnesota Vikings as 9 could not do anything except throw his 9th and 10th turnover of the season. And the Packers, holy cow, man, that defense was incredible. 5 sacks on J.J. McCarthy. Micah Parsons had 2. Devontae Wyatt had 2. You had Evan Williams getting his 2nd interception in 2 weeks. On top of that, you had Isaiah McDuffie having a phenomenal football game, getting half a sack, making some big tackles, and also getting an interception. And that defense, yeah, it was just on fire and flying all over the field on Sunday, as that Vikings offense couldn't do diddly squat. And when you take a look at the offense, they had no Josh Jacobs, they had no Matthew Golden, and they were still able to put together a winning performance. Jordan Love was not expected to do a whole lot, as he's still dealing with a left shoulder injury, and he wasn't forced to throw a ton of passes, and hey, saving up for that Thanksgiving game against the Detroit Lions. But Emmanuel Wilson, who was able to step in for Josh Jacobs, had over 100 yards, had 107 on the day, and 2 touchdowns, and he deserves a ton of credit because he has been really good this season as a backup to Josh Jacobs, and also shows that he could be RB1. And the most important thing for the Packers is that they are starting to get healthier. Josh Jacobs could be back on Thursday, Jaden Reed could be making his season debut, and if they're able to get those weapons back on offense, watch out, the Packers might be getting healthy at the right time. Now, their game against the Lions is going to be tough on Thursday, and while the Lions did have a tough time with Jameis Winston, which I told you, the Giants are a tough team, the Packers have an opportunity to sweep the Lions, which hasn't happened in years, and so that would be a really nice addition to an already pretty good season for the Packers. They already have a better division record than they did all of last year, and they've only played 2 divisional games so far this year. But similar to the Chicago Bears, we're about to find out how good the Packers actually are. 4 out of their last 6 games are against divisional opponents, and starting off with the Lions on Thanksgiving, let's see if the Packers can sweep them and hopefully stop Jahmyr Gibbs. Then at number 5, and hence this is why this was difficult, you got the Philadelphia Eagles. And let's talk about this power ranking real quick, because I gotta say, I struggled a ton with putting the Eagles somewhere, because immediately I was like, all right, well, the Eagles got to drop down. They were number 5 last week, right? But they just blew a 21-point lead in the second half, so they deserve to be deducted a couple of spots here. The problem is they already beat the Packers, and the Packers jumped up to number 6. The Colts are not going to stay in at number 5 because they just lost to the Chiefs. The Bears, they were able to knock off Mason Rudolph, and they got the win, but I don't think they should be top 5. And again, I don't think the Packers, because they lost to the Eagles, should be in the top 5 either, and I ain't going to put the 49ers there, so what do you want me to do? So yeah, Eagles, you stay in at number 5, and here's my justification. 1, the Philadelphia Eagles, really great start, but going up against a divisional opponent with a team that has a much improved defense, being the Dallas Cowboys, this was gonna be a tough game, and I even almost picked the Cowboys to win in predictions. And for the Eagles, this is not a crushing blow because 1, I still think that they are going to win that division no problem because the Commanders ain't winning it, and the Giants are already eliminated from the postseason. The only team they gotta worry about is the Cowboys, and they have a nice cushion. Meanwhile, the Colts, they drop a couple of spots, not only because they blew that lead in the fourth quarter, but they do not have an easy schedule going forward. The Eagles, they're facing the Bears on Friday, but other than that, they don't have too many really tough opponents left on their schedule. On top of that, and this is not going to sound great, but their offense hasn't shown up in about 3 weeks, but hell, they scored the most amount of points that they did in the past 3 weeks. They were able to knock off the Packers by only scoring 10 points. They barely scored against the Lions, were able to knock them off, and the problem ultimately with the Philadelphia Eagles is, again, that offense. And just after seeing that second half performance, I imagine this was Nick Sirianni's reaction when the team was trying to tell him the game wasn't over at halftime.
What the hell are you talking about? What?
That second half was abysmal. Whether you had turnovers, whether you had just stalled drives, they just could not get anything going in that second half whatsoever. And ultimately, that's why they lost this football game. They did still drag this game into overtime against the Dallas Cowboys, which is pretty good considering your offense didn't show up for the entire half. But ultimately, they only were knocked down 1 spot in the standings and still remain number 2 in the NFC. As I said, it's a big game on Friday against the Chicago Bears, and while I don't feel really great that they blew a 21-point lead, I still think the Eagles are still a really good team in the NFC, and ultimately, their destiny is in their hands. We'll see how they do against the Chicago Bears, and if they lose to them, yeah, they're going to be knocked out of the top 5. Number 4, you got the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks. All right, well, listen, they got the win. That's what's important. JSN is an absolute monster. He could potentially break NFL records. He's already setting franchise records for the Seahawks. But good God, that defense needs to get healthy and quick. As the Titans, they were able to hang around a little bit longer than I think Seahawks fans would have liked. But ultimately, the Seahawks don't move in these power rankings. They stay firmly at number 4. They are still one of the best teams in the NFC. And now they got a matchup against the Minnesota Vikings this upcoming Sunday, and Sam Darnold is ready to make the Vikings regret letting him walk away.
I'm gonna enjoy it very, very much.
But the good news is Sam Darnold didn't throw any interceptions this week, so that is a positive development. And ultimately for the Seahawks, they have that game circled with the LA Rams coming up in a couple of weeks, as that is going to be the biggest game remaining this season. They are still in contention for that number 1 spot in the NFC, but in order to do so, they are going to have to beat the Rams, who are looking like the best team in football right now. But for right this second, they remain at number 4. They got the Vikings on deck. And yeah, if JJ McCarthy winds up playing that game, it's not going to be pretty. Number 3, you got the Denver Broncos. The Broncos staying in the top 3 because the Seahawks did not do enough to make it into the top 3 once again, and so they get to enjoy keeping their ranking even when they were on the bye week. However, they could not catch a break this week in order to keep the number 1 seed in the AFC.
You had one, Joe.
Just the one.
Because that belongs to the Empire. But the Broncos, listen, getting healthier. Pat Surtain should be back sooner rather than later, and that will be a big boost for that Broncos secondary, which is already pretty damn good. And for the Broncos, they have an interesting schedule ahead of them. In a few weeks, they're going to be taking on the Green Bay Packers. They still got to go up against the Chiefs again. And really, for Denver, it's just going to come down to this offense and how well they're going to play during these last stretch of games. Their defense is one of the best in football. I have no doubts whatsoever about that. And if the Broncos are able to secure the number 1 seed in the AFC, I don't think anybody's going to want to go to Denver in January to play outside, to play in that altitude, and also to go up against that defense. And so for right now, the Broncos, they get to stay at number 3. Let's see if they can recapture that number 1 spot in the AFC. Number 2, you got the New England Patriots. The Patriots are number 1 in the AFC, but they lost 2 O-linemen on Sunday, and some are wondering, will this be the end of the Empire?
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I'm so sorry, I will never doubt you again. But the Patriots able to get a win over the Cincinnati Bengals in a game where the Bengals defense actually looked pretty good. Drake May threw a pick 6, but then Joe Flacco threw a pick 6, as that Patriots defense continues to be pretty darn solid. You look at the offensive side of things, and Campbell being out, while he is going to be on IR, he can return. And so that's the best news they could have possibly gotten, because that injury did not look good. So thankfully, it's not as serious as predicted. However, Drake May has been beat up a few times behind that offensive line, and so now being down 2 offensive linemen, it's not the best thing for the Patriots offense. The good news is the Bills lost this week. The Patriots schedule is not that difficult going forward, and ultimately if they're able to just win out the rest of these games, they are the number 1 team in the AFC, and they're going to get a bye week in the wild card round. And so for the evil Empire, they remain firmly at number 2, because there is one who is better. And remaining at number 1, you got the LA Rams. The Rams absolutely dominated the beat-up Tampa Bay Buccaneers this past Sunday night, and it was not even close. That game was over at halftime, and Stafford, Puka, and Devontae, they are one deadly trio.
So together we're the Three Amigos.
The Rams defense was making life miserable for the Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield leaving that game at halftime with an injured shoulder. And even when he was in that game, he really couldn't get a lot going. They only scored 1 touchdown. And the Rams defense, they were pretty much superb all night. Especially when Teddy Bridgewater came in, they could barely move that football. And as for that offense, good God, Stafford is really damn good. Continuing to make a claim for MVP this year. Yeah, Devontae Adams getting 2 touchdowns. And hey, it wasn't for a single yard, so progress. For the Rams, they look like the most complete team, not only in the NFC, but in all of football. Similar to the Seahawks, they got a few divisional games left that will be very important down the stretch, especially against the Seahawks in Seattle, and that will be a tough place to play. But for right now, not only are they number 1 in the power rankings, but they are number 1 in the NFC with the Eagles' loss. And let's see if they're ever going to give it up. And so just to recap, at number 1, you got the Rams, 2 Patriots, 3 Broncos, 4 Seahawks, 5 Eagles, 6 Packers, 7 Colts, 8 Bears, 9 49ers, and 10 Jaguars. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. We should have a better idea of who these teams are after this week, is what I just keep on saying week after week after week. And at some point, I'll be right. But let me know. You know, I saw me at TomGrossiComedy.com, and a big shout and thank you to all the Patreons and YouTube members for supporting this channel. And thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grossi. And as always, go Pack Go.